Hello, my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got my November reading wrap-up to share with you guys. I read 9 books in November, 5 of which were 5 stars. That doesn't sound right, but I guess it is. So we're just going to go from first read in the month all the way through to the most recent one, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. The first book that I read this month was Sweet Fury by Sasha Bischoff. This was a book about a actress and her director husband who are doing a adaptation of Tender is the Night by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And I thought this was such a cute, clever, keep you on the edge of your seat type of book. And throughout, if you're a fan of F. Scott Fitzgerald, you will notice like the Easter eggs and the little parallels between the story in general and his work, and then of course they're adapting his novel, and I thought it was very clever. But also, if you're not familiar with F. Scott, that's fine. Like, it stands alone, of course, on its own without the references. But I thought it was great, and it kind of goes back and forth. So there's like they're filming the movie, but then also she's seeing a therapist because she wants to work through some of her childhood trauma and stuff so that she can better connect with this character. And I just thought it was very, very interesting. And then things get a little messy because no one's exactly who they seem to be, and things kick off, and it was great. I thought it was 5 stars. Loved it. Next up, unfortunately, this was only 3 stars, and that was Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio. I'd wanted to check out this author because I always hear people talking about If We Were Villains by this author. And it sounds good, and I'm still going to check it out. This one just didn't work for me. I liked the premise. It's a novella, so it's very short. It just kind of felt like it needed more. Or less. It either needed to be tighter or like longer, like a full-length novel. And it's about this group of people who always meet up out in a graveyard for a smoke break. And they're all just kind of hanging around. And then one night something's going on in the graveyard. And then the group breaks up and they all go their separate ways. So you're just sort of checking in on each of them. And I kind of wish they'd all stayed together. But 3 stars. I feel like you can skip this one. Especially because, you know, if you're going to be paying money, don't worry about this one. Next up was The Favorites by Lane Fargo, another 5 star. This is about 2 figure skaters, like a pairs figure skating team, and their life. And I thought it was so well done, and I was so invested that at one point I had to stop myself from Googling these figure skaters' names. I was like, I need to know more about them. And then I was like, hold your horses, girl. They're not real. So that tells you like how well developed these characters are. And it goes from when they're teenagers, and it spans like, I don't know, 20, 30 years of their lives, and like all the drama that came with being like this very famous, very captivating figure skating team. 5 stars. Loved it. Oh, this one. Another 5 stars. I Who Have Never Known Men. This is going to be in one of my favorites of the year video because it was incredible. This is about 39 women and 1 young girl who are locked in a cage underground, sort of in a bunker. And they've been there for so long that like they hardly remember life before it. And then one day when there are men that guard the cage, and they put food in, but the guards never speak to them. Never once do they speak to them. And one day as he's opening the hatch to put the food in, an alarm goes off and the guards run away. And he leaves the key in the hatch, and because he's panicked and he's running. And our main character, who is nameless throughout the whole thing, she's able to get out through the hatch, get the keys, unlock the door, and let the women out. And then they emerge at the top of the bunker. They don't know where they are. They don't know why they've been underground. They don't know anything. And there's no one around. And it's just flat land as far as the eye can see. And it's about them trying to survive afterwards. And it's incredible. Incredible. 5 stars. An all-time favorite. Next up, we have The Lost House by Melissa Larson. This was 4 stars. This was about a woman who travels to her ancestral home of Iceland because she is going to meet up with a woman who does a true crime podcast, because for decades it has been thought that her grandfather was a murderer and killed her grandmother and her aunt when her aunt was a baby. And so she goes to talk to this woman and try to figure out what happened. And because she can't make peace in her mind with who she knew her grandfather to be and this killer that everyone back in Iceland thinks he was. And so she goes and she tries to figure things out. And I thought it was incredibly intriguing. And that's the second book I read this year, that took place in Iceland. I loved that. Loved it. Oh, Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fiedo. That was 5 stars. This is, again, it's fairly short. It's like 200 pages. And it's this woman. So it takes place back in the Victorian era, like a long time ago. And this woman is going to this like mansion to be like an au pair, like a nanny for these 2 kids that live in this house. And this woman is unhinged. She's unhinged. And as she goes there, the more and more time she spends in this house, the more and more unhinged she's becoming. And she has all these dark urges that we know she's been acting on throughout her life. And the urges are getting stronger and stronger again. And she's trying to figure out, what to do, what's going on. It was gruesome. It was disturbing. And I ate it up. I loved it. And there are no likable characters. Everybody in that book is terrible, but I loved it. A lot of fun. 5 stars. Oh boy. Here we go. Next up. And I know a lot of people loved this book. I've heard so many. I've seen it everywhere. On TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. Everybody loved it. So me and Krista, we read it for our podcast. This was 2 stars. The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. Now, I went into it, like, it's not normally the type of book I read, but I went into it pumped. I was ready to love it. I was like, me and you were going to have a good time. Because, whatever. I was ready. This was a flop for me. 2 stars I feel is generous. And I gave it 2 stars because it's not offensively bad. So it's not it's not 1 star. It starts off and we got Luke and Lorelai Gilmore. Those are the characters, even though their names are Jeannie and Logan. I had to look because I couldn't remember. All I know is Luke and Lorelai. And she's taking over her aunt's cafe. He's the grumpy, guy around town. And like, it was so Luke and Lorelai, like the dialogue, the way they'd move their bodies. There was a town meeting, which was very, very obviously the same town meetings as in the Gilmore Girls. And they had their very own Taylor Dosey, and then halfway through the book, it switches. And then like the characters are no longer Luke and Lorelai and they start reading really young. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. There's 3 books already in this series. People love it. So give it a try. If you love cozy, like small town cozy romance vibes, maybe you'll like it. I don't know. I'm not convinced a human wrote it. We'll just leave it at that. Anyway, next up, we have, let's see. Oh, Sharkheart. Sharkheart, a love story by Emily Habeck. I loved this. 5 stars. 5 stars. Would recommend. This, you have to sort of suspend your disbelief because this is about a man. So in this version of our world, there's a very rare condition you can get where you slowly transform into an animal. And this man in this story, his name is Lewis, he gets a diagnosis. Like, the condition itself is rare enough, but he gets an extra rare form of it where he is turning into a great white shark. And it's an aggressive form of it, so he only has months to go. And him and his wife are trying to wade through this diagnosis together. And it's so sad. There are so many lines that I underlined because they were so, so beautiful. I cried so hard while reading this at many different points. If you've ever loved someone that's had a life-changing diagnosis, or if you've ever had to care for a loved one, I think this will touch you particularly deeply. It's beautiful. The writing is spectacular. This is going to be another top favorite of the year. So good. I'm not going to say too much more about it so that I don't start crying about it. And then finally, the most recent book I read was Listen to Your Sister by Nina Veal. And this was a 4 stars. This one is about a group of siblings. You got Dre, Jamie, and Kala or Kaza? I don't have the book in front of me. 3 siblings, and so the sister, she's the oldest, and she's kind of looking after the youngest one, Jamie. And then the middle brother, Dre, he's, helping out when he can, but he's not a big help. And then something happens. This book is so incredibly hard to talk about because it is. It's hard to tell you what it's about because it would sound insane. It wouldn't make any sense. But the sister, she keeps having these nightmares, recurrent nightmares about her brothers being in danger and getting killed. And so she is always on high alert. And her preferred state is being at home and both of them being in her home with her, even though Dre doesn't live there. And Jamie is always out in the streets being a nuisance. So she's always stressed out. And then there's a situation that's very topical involving a protest. And from there, things kick off. And it's about how it's about siblings and sibling relationship and family and how trauma needs to be healed or you'll be haunted by it forever. It's the best way to word it. And it was really, really good. The premise itself is so unique. I've never seen anyone sort of tackle anything in that way. The same with this one. Like, this premise is wild. What an interesting way to tell a story. And the same was true for Listen to Your Sister. And 4 stars. I loved it. I can't wait to see what this author writes next because she's obviously incredibly, incredibly talented. So there you go, you guys. That is everything I read in November 2024. I cannot believe it's December already. And we are almost in the new year. Oh, it's crazy. So I hope you guys are doing well. And I will see you again very soon. Bye, guys.